Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Box Office Talk. This is the show where I break down what happened at the box office, see if my predictions for the top 5 are correct, then make predictions for next week's top 5. So let's get right on into it. Last week, I predicted the number 1 would be The Creator, number 2 would be Paw Patrol, the Mighty Movie, number 3 would be Saw X, number 4 would be Dumb Money, and number 5 would be The Nun 2. And unfortunately, I knew it was going to be an interesting weekend for predictions just because I kind of could guess, like, these numbers are going to look pretty big in comparison to the few that we have been getting the last couple weekends, but there's not going to be like a really obvious winner here. There's nothing that's going to be huge, you know what I mean? So it was going to be interesting to predict, and there was some uncertainty, and unfortunately, I got 0 out of 5 of my predictions right for this weekend, and there was another movie, though, that surged up, another Fathom event movie that surged up, upended my predictions, upended a lot of your predictions. Nobody got their predictions right, unfortunately, which, you know, that's a big bummer, but man, it'll be interesting to talk about. So let's go over what was the clear winner here for the weekend. Number 1 was Paw Patrol, the Mighty Movie. I for some reason didn't think this really had a shot. I thought, okay, it's you know, popular with the kids, but it's not going to be too popular. Like, it's mostly like a younger kid. It's not like a wide appeal mainstream kids thing. But, you know, apparently the audience was enough, especially with the other theater goers seeing other movies this weekend. This movie opened with $23 million. The budget is only $30 million. So when you combine that with the worldwide total of $46 million, they are actually $14 million off from already doubling that budget, which is pretty solid. And then we go over comparisons to the other Paw Patrol movie that came out 2 years ago. So not 2020, but it was still 2021, where we were trying to see, like, what will people be going back for at this time, and, you know, can we sustain this? Can we keep theaters open? You know, that kind of like iffy kind of period. So obviously it did a little bit better than that. It opened 10 million over the opening weekend for the first movie, and then it now needs 17 million to outgross its entire theatrical run. And then worldwide it needs 105 million to outgross the entire run there. So worldwide will definitely be interesting, and that's, you know, of course, where the first movie really thrived was worldwide numbers, so we'll see if this movie still has a chance to get up there. I don't think this will be like a huge drop-off next weekend. I honestly have no idea how this one is going to turn out, because it could be a thing where you front-load the opening weekend with the fans, you know, the really young kids, but then they've already seen it, so maybe there isn't like a, you know, a return visit, you know, there's not word of mouth being spread, because if someone were to tell you, like, oh, that Paw Patrol movie was pretty good, I feel like some, like, older audience members, so adults, would be like, you're lying to me, and they wouldn't take it seriously. But still, you know, the fact that it is kind of on its way to outpace the original film, and the budget is kept pretty low, you know, clear winner for Nickelodeon? Is that who does this show? I don't... I'm pretty sure it's Nickelodeon. I'm sorry, I don't know off the top of my head. I'm not a fan of Paw Patrol, as you know. But yeah, that was the clear winner here, and I had doubts about it, so proves me wrong. Number 2 was, and it wasn't even a flip-flop of like, oh, well, I guess my number 1 and number 2 just in the wrong order. No, number 2 was actually Saw X. I didn't know where the popularity of the Saw franchise really was, because Spiral didn't do so well. That was also 2021, but even before that, Jigsaw, the one that they made in 2017, was kind of like, they're trying to bring it back, but not everyone was totally on board, so I didn't know where this one was going to do just based off those last two. But on a budget of $13 million, they did pretty well this weekend, opening with $18 million, and then worldwide they've already added up to a total of $29 million, so if you're doing your math correctly, that has already doubled its $13 million budget. It now needs just 10 million more to triple that. So we're kind of in a, they've been hinting at doing more, doing other sequels and stuff like that. So they're definitely in a good spot here, a good little model here. I'm assuming similar to how the first couple, at least, I'm not sure about like the financial, you know, budgets for the other Saw movies. I know that there was a little bit of like waning interest as the films went on, or at least that was kind of the consensus of it, or Paranormal Activity was starting to, you know, jumpstart right when Saw was kind of entering its later stages. So there was competing competition, and Paranormal Activity was looking like the clear winner. Not too many people were interested in Saw anymore at this time, but now, at least, now that it's been a while, and now that they've made one that people genuinely really enjoy. I even enjoyed this movie, and I've only enjoyed the first Saw movie, and the rest I think range from okay to really awful. And they can be fun to watch, sure, but you know what I mean? But now that they've waited a little bit, and they've come back to like a model that works, keeping the budgets low, but hey, we're making the movie that people want to see, and the word of mouth spreads, especially that was the most jarring thing to see, because all of the Saw movies, even the first one, which I like, they're all rotten on Rotten Tomatoes, but this was the first Saw movie to get a positive fresh rating, which was outstanding to see. I thought it was like, oh, well, fans saw it first, so that's what's really bumping it up, but then days go by, and it's like, oh no, people are actually really connecting with this one. That's interesting. So I think we're in an interesting spot with this franchise now, where people are kind of interested to see more, maybe, especially if they do it right. As far as opening weekends go, it's not one of the highest. It's definitely, I checked the numbers, it's in the top 5 lowest openings, but it's not as low as Spiral. It actually was higher by 10 million because Spiral opened with 8 million. It's 4 million over the opening weekend for Saw 6 and 2 million over the weekend for Jigsaw, which I think is the most important. In fact, it's actually on par with the first film's opening weekend of 18 million, right around there. So they are actually in a pretty good spot, but I really wanted to highlight that it did way better than the last 2 installments. So it's like, okay, it may not be the highest, but they got to work back a bit, after where the franchise kind of led to, and then the most recent 2 they tried to do. Now there can be some room to kind of grow. Like, I think we saw that with Scream. Scream 5 came back and it did, really well, and then Scream 6 was even bigger. So I think we're in a good spot here. It's going to be interesting to see what they do with this in the future. It needs 5 million until it outgrosses Spiral's entire domestic run, so it's already in a fantastic spot there. Worldwide, it needs 10 million to do so. So yeah, I know that some people tried to, I think it was Lionsgate actually, or some studio tried to like create a new Barbenheimer. They were like, oh, Saw and Paw Patrol open up on the same weekend. Saw Patrol, anyone? And it was like, shut the fuck. Like, everyone was like, shut the fuck up with that. You know what I mean? No one bought into that. And, that's obvious. Barbenheimer is not happening here. I just want to make that very clear. That is not what is happening here. Saw Patrol didn't happen. However, it is interesting how, in their own ways, though, these movies, are doing pretty well. I'm not saying it's because of Saw Patrol. No one who saw Paw Patrol went to see Saw X. And if they did, they're in a very small group of people. Now let's move on to number 3, which I thought had a chance at number 1, and it did not. That's The Creator. I was kind of bummed to hear, like, how on its opening day, people were like, ooh, it's already fizzling. I saw how they were trying to do, like, some viral marketing where they had billboards up or posters, and they had some people, like, spray paint stuff on it. They had people with the mech android kind of makeup prosthetics show up at places similar to how for the film Smile, you had a couple people smiling at the baseball cameras there, stuff like that. So I thought maybe this could, and it's a big sci-fi movie, so maybe, and it's in a time, it's in a time where there isn't like a big new blockbuster to get people excited. So maybe this is something, from the director of Rogue One, and it kind of looks like Star Wars in a way. Unfortunately, it only opened with $14 million this weekend. Now, like I talked about last weekend, I think, when I was doing the predictions, the budget is only $80 million. That's kind of like one of the big talking points, is that the movie looks so gorgeous and it only cost $80 million, where you have so many of these other movies that cost way more and they don't look as good, That's the big kind of appeal. And I thought also that would maybe lead into, people coming to see this just out of curiosity from the behind the scenes talk, but lo and behold, not really. Worldwide, though, it's not really doing it any favors. It is only sitting at $32 million. So maybe in the next couple weeks, I don't think word of mouth staying power is going to help it, because this movie's kind of mixed. Some people kind of are having varying opinions on it. Some people, kind of enjoyed it. Some people didn't really enjoy it. So it'll be interesting to see if it can hold over at all. But we do have a pretty mega hit coming next weekend, and then the weekend after that. So it's like, will its holding over even matter at that point? So as far as Gareth Edwards' filmography, it does have an opening weekend higher than Monsters by 14 million, but that's because Monsters was a very, 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 very limited release. It is 79 million below Godzilla and 141 million below Rogue One, and obviously I know these aren't fair comparisons because those are the big franchise studio IP films, but still, it's just interesting to compare. Domestically, it's already outranked Monsters' domestic run by 14 million. It now needs 186 million until it outgrosses Godzilla. So it's probably not going to get to that point. It's going to be Gareth Edwards' third highest grossing film out of the 4. And who knows if this one will even have the staying power to even double its budget to be considered a success. I don't know. As far as the worldwide numbers, it did outgross Monsters by 27 million, but it's behind Godzilla by 497 1987, so that also isn't helping. It's kind of a bummer because I did enjoy this movie. I do wonder, because of what happened with Godzilla and Rogue One, I do wonder if I watch this movie again, my opinion of it will go down, because that's kind of how it happened with Godzilla and Rogue One. Like, I watched them once in theaters and I was like, this is amazing, this is awesome. And then watching them again a couple other times at home, the, opinion of it started to go down, and now I'm kind of at a point where they're like, yeah, they're okay, and I wonder if that'll happen again with the creator. So, but for right now, I did enjoy this. So it is kind of a bummer that the reception hasn't been fantastic, overwhelmingly positive, like the surprise box office hit, but oh well, you can't win them all. I just just worrying about the future of original ideas and moderately big budgets, Anyways, let's move on to number 4, which is The Nun 2, making $4.6 million, adding to a domestic total of $76 million. It has outgrossed Annabelle Comes Home by $2 million, and it now needs $8 million to outgross the first Annabelle. Worldwide, it is sitting at $231 million now, so it's outgrossed Annabelle Comes Home by exactly $1 million, and it now needs $25 million until it outgrosses the first Annabelle. So it's interesting how, like, for these Conjuring movies, or at least for what I'm noticing with The Nun 2, for the domestic and worldwide charts, every time it outranks something, it's usually the same one. Like, sometimes you'll have varying qualities because sometimes a movie will appeal more in other markets as opposed to the US, so the numbers vary as far as, like, it outgrows this movie domestically, but it's got a long ways to go to do that worldwide. In this case, it's like, no, they're kind of in sync, so which is kind of funny. Moving on to number 5, which is the Fathom event that blew my mind, didn't know it was a thing. It's called The Blind, and you might be wondering, what is this? Apparently, because I tried looking on Wikipedia, it's not there, so it's only on IMDb. It is the true story of Duck Dynasty's own Phil Robertson, his life story. And if it's only a Fathom event, I can only imagine the quality of the film. And I was surprised to find out that Amelia Eve, I think that's the actress name, Amelia Eve from Haunting of Bly Manor, a Mike Flanagan project that I love, like a lot of Mike Flanagan projects I love, and she was fantastic in that show. She is in this movie. That's crazy. I have never heard of this, but it only made 4.1 million. So it's not like, oh man, the Fathom event that took everything by storm. It's like, no, it did pretty solid for a Fathom event. It just somehow managed to sneak into the top 5, and normally they don't really do that, because they're so niche. It's usually like, you'll see a Fathom event ad play before a movie if you manage to walk in before they play that ad in the movie theater, and maybe you're interested in it. Most of the time it's like opera commercials. I don't know what the budget of this thing is, so 4.1 million, I don't know if that's if that's solid or not. It doesn't have a worldwide total, but I haven't even watched a trailer. I don't even know what this movie, like, visually, like, looks like. Like, does it look cheap? Does it look like one of those, or does it look like an actual movie? I don't know. I genuinely don't know. I'm totally blind on the blind. Tis. Let's move on to number 6, which is A Haunting in Venice, making $3.8 million, adding to a domestic total of $31 million. It still needs $14 million until it outgrosses Death on the Nile, and worldwide it is sitting at $89 million, and it needs $41 million until it outgrosses Death on the Nile. So we're still a ways away. We still need $31 million even to double its $60 million budget, and it's trying to cling on. I can see it right here, trying to cling on for dear life. And once again, I want to reiterate, maybe because we're in spooky season now, something like this will have a better hold than something like The Blind or The Creator even, or maybe Paw Patrol. I don't know, because we are now in this month, spooky season month. Or maybe The Exorcist will just take all the competition, and then people will wait until FNAF comes out. I don't know. I genuinely don't know. But as someone who did really like this movie and thinks that it deserved a lot better, it is a bummer to see that it can't even outgross Death on the Nile, because I think this is better than Death on the Nile. I think this is my favorite Branagh Hercule Poirot movie. But it's just a bummer that with each one, Murder on the Orient Express, solid hit, Death on the Nile, kind of bummer, but it went to streaming like almost soon after, so, and 2022, early 2022, still kind of awkward like we weren't fully back yet, even though No Way Home just came out, so, you know the time period, it was weird, and now this, where people are kind of back, in the theater, and it just can't get the same audience as Orient Express, and the budget is only $5 million higher at the most, or at the least. yeah, that's just a bummer. Let's move on to number 7, which is Dumb Money, which is probably a bigger bummer. This movie cost $30 million. There's a budget of $30 million, and it made $3.5 million now on an opening weekend, where this is kind of seen as like the expanding weekend. Like, it's in a lot of other theaters now. It's not just in limited release. It's why I fucked up my predictions last weekend. But it's only made 3.5 million, and it only adds to a domestic total of 7.3. We don't even really have a worldwide total. The worldwide total we have only goes up by like in the like 10,000s, you know, like that's not enough, you know, if even that, you know. It's kind of a bummer. I can't say that it's like the biggest bummer for me personally, because I saw the movie, I saw it early, and it was kind of like, is this really worth making a movie about? Like, you know, I'm kind of enjoying myself. It's interesting to see dramatize this event that I only kind of heard some headlines about, you know, but I wouldn't say it's like this big, like, oh my gosh, so important, you know, such an important biopic kind of movie. It's kind of like, yeah, you know, like I could read about this and probably get the same experience out of watching the movie, you know. It's, the movie doesn't really add anything to this story, and I love a Paul Dano, you know, I love a Seth Rogen, I love a Vinny D and Nick Offerman, American Forever, but I don't think any of these actors are even, I don't even think these roles are even worthy of what they usually do. So yeah, it's just kind of fizzling here. Let's move on to number 8, which is The Equalizer 3, making 2.7 million, adding to a domestic total of 85 million. So it's still 17 million away from outgrossing both the original and the sequel. Worldwide, it is sitting at 158 million. So it needs 34 million until it outgrosses the original and sequel. With The Exorcist Believer being the only big new release coming out next weekend, this one will probably still stick around at least a little while longer. So I am interested to see if additional holdovers in the US box office and then the worldwide box office can get us even closer to the most consistent box office franchise, The Equalizer. As I've been talking about, the first two are just so close as far as their domestic and worldwide runs, and this one is just inching closer and closer. So I would love to see it end like only like a million off, or like exactly at the same point. That would be so special. Number 9, though, I don't even though I'm saying, like, you know, Exorcist is really the only big movie coming out. This one, though, I think has a pretty big chance of slipping out of here faster than the number 10 spot, which is Expendables, dropping huge last week. It was in the top 5 at least last weekend, and now here it is at number 9, making 2.4 million, adding to a domestic total of $13 million. It is still 26 million off from Expendables 3, and then worldwide it is sitting at only 36 million, 173 million off from Expendables 3, but more importantly, 164 million off from doubling its $100 million budget, which it hasn't even crossed over. It hasn't even crossed over that initial point. You know, it needs to double it to be considered a success. Crossing over the initial point, maybe have an argument for, well, there's some audience there, you know, you can't deny that. Why did they make a 4th one? Holy shit. I can maybe see them trying to do like a streaming thing now, or like I don't think straight to DVD is really a thing that people aim for anymore. So maybe like it's a Netflix original and it's Expendables 5. Or 5 Expendables, where they get rid of the E and put the 5 at the front. Yeah, this is like, I don't mean to keep harping on this because I already kind of did last weekend, but man, the wild thinking that people really want to see Expendables 4, crazy. Closing out the video, number 10, which I think, like I've been saying, I think it'll be here next weekend because Expendables 4 I think is just going to plummet. Number 10 is Barbie, making 1.4 million, adding to a domestic total of 633 million. So for the all-time domestic runs list, it is still 19 million behind Jurassic World's number 10 spot. It wasn't able to crack the top 10 domestic runs of all time while it was in the top 10, but, you know, who cares? It's already had so many other achievements. Who cares if it breaks another one? Worldwide, it is sitting at 1,433,000,000, so still 20 mil behind Frozen 2's number 13 spot. Wasn't able to crack the top 10 all-time worldwide runs, but who cares? And also, it'll probably be here next weekend because, like I said, Expendables 4 will probably drop. These two will probably swap. Now it's time for the fun part, the predictions for next week's top 5. Like I've been saying, I think number 1 will be The Exorcist Believer because I'm pretty sure that's the only big release coming out, unless, knock on wood, unless there's another Fathom event that I don't know about, or there's like an anime that's coming out of nowhere, or a movie like The Blind that'll, you know, strike a chord with somebody and it'll surge into the top 5. I don't know. I don't think that's happening. So number 1 I think will be The Exorcist Believer. Number 2, Paw Patrol the Mighty Movie. Number 3, Saw X. Number 4, The Creator. And number 5, 5, The Nun 2. But what are your predictions for next week's top 5? Leave them in the comments below. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.